Should venues pay artists more money? Should venue pay artists a cut from the bar? I'm seeing a lot of chatter going on right now, right? The music industry has been shut down for a year and artists haven't made as much money, venues haven't made as much money. So what is fair? How should venues be paying artists? Should they continue doing what they did before the pandemic, or should they be paying artists more? I think to better understand that question, we need to look at some numbers, right? So let's talk about clubs that are in the 100 to 600 capacity range. Can they afford at how they're currently paying artists, or how they are going to pay artists going forward? Again, I saw a lot of chatter online, artists complaining that venues are being cheap, they're being greedy, they're not paying artists enough, and it needs to get better. That artists should be getting a cut from the bar, because if it wasn't for the artists, the venues wouldn't exist, right? So a lot of really good points on the artist side, arguing for more money from venues. And these are mostly independent local artists that just want more money from their local venues. So is this a fair question? It's always a fair question. It's always fair to ask for more money, to ask for a better deal, right? And every venue is going to have a different deal. So with that, you need to figure out which deal is best for you and which venue is the best for you. It's not always the right choice to play the coolest venue in town where all the national acts are playing, because you may not make as much money because their deal sucks. And then sometimes it might not make sense to play the shithole down the street because it's not a place where your fans want to go. And not saying that a venue might be a shithole, but it could be. But anyways, I digress. So what is fair? So I think to really understand that, we need to look at all the potential revenue streams. We need to look at the expenses. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to pull up a spreadsheet that I use for my show settlements. So this is a sheet that I use for what's called the internal settlement. So the settlement I do after I've settled with the artist to see if my show made any money and if this show was worthwhile, right? So let's take a look. So here's a look at my internal settlement. First, what I have is the event, right? A show name, the date, then who was the show rep. So let's say I was the show rep. Then who was the awesome tour manager that I got to work with, and then who was the talent buyer that bought the show. So let's say we have a show and we sold capacities. Overall the capacity is 300, right? So but the capacity can obviously change based on what you sold when well, it's always going to be 300, but it's just a way I adjust, right? So really we sold 50 in advance, 10 day of show, and if it's a 350 cap venue, I had 240 tickets available at the door, right? So let's say we sold 50 in advance at $8. We sold 10 tickets day of show online at $10, and let's say we sold 100 tickets at the door at $12. And then here just tells you how many tickets were still available, right? So we have 140 unsold tickets, 160 total sold, 1,700 is our gross. So typically with most venues, your key expenses, so just move over here to the left side on the screen. Your key expenses are always going to be your production. So you have your audio and lighting engineers. If you have both, some venues are only going to have one. You're going to have an audio person that will also do lighting, and may not be always the best production wise, but because you don't really want the same person doing audio and lighting. It's just a lot of work on them, and it's just not going to make the show look as well. But one house production person at minimum, and most of the times you're gonna have two. So let's say we're paying them 125 for the day each, and then a door person we're paying $75 at the door for the person that's selling the tickets as people are walking up at the door, right? So with these numbers, one thing I want to kind of mention, like, so usually a door person might be $10 an hour or $50 flat. That's what I see a lot. Rates are going up. Things are going to be more expensive. We want people who are fighting for $15 minimum wages. Then you also need to accept $15 minimum wages when it comes to your shows, and not making an argument for or against that. But if you want to have a $15 minimum wage that you're fighting for and arguing for, then you also need to accept paying that to people that you work with. So if a door person is working 5 hours at $15 an hour, right? That's going to give you $75. That's why I budgeted that here. So my security I have at $200. Usually, again, $10 an hour. They probably work 5 hours each. Yes, they have 4 security guards. Security is something I would never skimp on or try to negotiate to bring lower, because you want your shows to be safe, especially these days. There's a lot of crazy shit going on in the world, and you want to make sure that your show is safe and protected, and protect yourself as an artist from getting hurt and from liability, The venue needs to protect themselves, and if there's a promoter involved in the middle, they need to be protecting themselves as well. So, right. So let's say again, 4 security guards at $15 an hour for 5 hours, right? So that's 75 each. So really, I'm going to bring this number up 300. So $300 is my budgeted and my actual expense. Then cleaning, not really something you see at every venue in the past, but now with COVID, there's a higher demand of keeping venues sanitized, safe, and clean. So I'm gonna bump that up to 100 or add $100 in for cleaning here. I think these are all fair expenses when it comes to a show, right? So the different types of revenue that you might have on a show is you're gonna have ticket sales, you're gonna have bar or maybe food sales, merchandise, and ticket rebates, right? So let's say um, the artist gets to keep all of their merchandise sales. The venue's not going to touch their merch. Um, so let's take a look at how the other expenses or revenue streams and expenses come into play. So first of all, we have $1,700 in ticket sales. So $1,700. The venue does not charge a facility fee, which they technically could charge a facility fee, right? And that could cover cleaning and things like that if they just charge $1 or so facility fee. Sales tax is going to be 6.5%. So in the $1,700 number, sales tax is included in that, right? So you're not paying it on top. So that's included. So you're going to deduct the sales tax. That's going to bring the number down to 1644.15. Let me just make sure that is correct because it doesn't kind of look correct to me. All right, so fix that, and then this is going to be yep. All right, fix that. Sorry about that. So, all right, here we have our gross, right? So we're going to adjust that by taking out the sales tax, and that's going to bring us down to $1,596.24. Show expenses were $725. We'll take those expenses out, and that's going to bring us down to $871. So now in the past, and so pre-COVID, right? A lot of times venues would still take a cut from that number, maybe 10%, maybe 20%. I've seen it as high as 30%. I've actually seen it as high as 50-50. But let's say artists want a better deal. So I think it's fair to at least deduct the expenses to put on a show. And we're going to give the artist 100% of this, right? So 100% of that number, 871.24. Now, can the venue afford giving the artist a cut from the bar? So let's take a look at what the rest of the numbers look like. So we're going to come down here. So the venue made $0 on the show, right? Because they paid all their expenses, 871, 100% went to the artist. So it was zero income right here. Now we're going to take our food and beverage. Let's say that was $10 a head. So the venue made $1,600 on the bar, decent bar night. And then we're going to take out 30% for cost of goods. So it's $480 for cost of goods, right? So if you're really, really running your bar well, you are well inventoried, well maintained, you're keeping all your costs low, nobody's drinking for free, then 30% is a really, really good number. So 30% is cost of goods, it's 480. Then your bartenders, which were not part of the show, but let's say they're also $15 an hour, right? Because that's again what a lot of people are arguing for, $15 minimum wage. And the music industry is one of the leaders of asking for a $15 minimum wage. So again, if you're going to expect a wage change, then you have to pay for that wage change. So 2 bartenders at $15 an hour times 6 hours, that's $180 right here. Let's say the venue gets a ticket rebate. So take a look at one of my past videos on how venues make money, but it's basically venues and promoters can get a cut of those really fun service fees that you pay. So let's say this venue gets $1 for every ticket sold from rebates, and really that would only be from online, right? So it really only be $60. Someone put $60 in here because they're not going to get a rebate on what's sold in cash at the door. Now, let's say they account a general manager to every show at $200 a show. So if they're doing 5 shows a week, that's about $1,000 a week, $52,000 a year. That's a fair wage for a general manager at a small club, right? A 300-person club. Actually pretty good. Insurance, you're paying 50 cents per person at the show. So that's about $80. That's kind of the middle range, depending on how many shows a venue does, right? So the more shows they do, the higher or less that insurance number is going to be. The fewer shows they do, the higher that insurance number is going to be. So the venue made $720 in profit from this show. Now, when you look at these expenses right here, these are the monthly overhead of a venue, right? So you're a venue in a really good location. 300 capacity. That's a decent sized venue. Let's say you have a couple of dressing rooms, you have an office. That's a decent sized space, right? So $7,500, depending where you're at, that number can be drastically higher. It can be a little bit lower, but $7,500 for most places is what you're going to be paying in rent. Then your utilities, this might probably be on the low side. I'd say this is $1,500 for utilities. Then your maintenance, you're going to spend about $1,000 a month maintaining your venue, marketing, and an admin person. They're also at about $1,000 a week, so you're going to count $4,000 for that person, and then you're going to have miscellaneous expenses, right? So let's add in an extra $500 for miscellaneous. So 14,500 is the monthly overhead. So if you take 14,500, divide that by 720 of what you made in the show, the venue has to do 20 shows a month just to cover their monthly nut. That doesn't even mean that they've made a profit, right? And that is assuming that every show is going to bring at least $720, or some shows are going to bring in more. Some shows are going to bring in more. Some shows are going to bring in less, right? So if you're averaging $720 a show in profit, you need to do about 20 shows. So really that number should be higher. The venue should try to make twice that per show to really help cover that monthly nut. But with that said, looking at those numbers, can a venue afford to give artists a cut from the bar? I say no, they can't, especially if they're going to give the artists 100% of the door after expenses, right? And regardless of what the expenses are, whether it's the expenses we just went through in this scenario or they're lower, if the venue's giving the artist 100% of the door, the venue's making $0 in profit from ticket sales, from the box office, right? So they only are relying on money that they make from the bar and other revenue streams. And as you see, it's really, really hard to cover that nut. So if you want to dig into venues bar or revenue streams, it's going to be really hard for them to survive and really hard for you to still have a venue to play in. So what's better is figure out how you can partner with a venue and maybe do a higher volume of shows, bring in more money. Maybe if you can make a deal, if the bar hits a certain number, you get a percentage, right? If the bar does at least $3,000 or something like that, maybe then you get 10%, you get $300 from the bar. But it's really, really tough trying to argue to touch the bar. I think the better argument is trying to get 100% of the door and keeping your merch. That is the best argument an artist can make. And the promoters or the people that get maybe better deals at venues, that usually happens when you're doing high volume business at the venue. So if you're a promoter and you're bringing in 5 to 10 shows a month, now of course there's an incentive for the venue to try to keep that promoter on board, right? Especially if they're doing good shows that are selling out. And just because a show's sold out doesn't mean they're killing it at the bar. If it's a show with a bunch of people under 18 and they're only making $1 ahead at the bar, so imagine that bar was only $160 for this scenario, the venue makes no money. It almost makes no sense for them to open the doors, right? If they're, so let's say it's $300. So if they're only making $300, so they're not even getting anywhere close to chipping away at that monthly nut. So that's why some venues don't do all ages shows, or that's why some venues only do 18 and up or 21 and up for shows, because they don't make any money when they have underage shows. Some venues will add $2 or $3 on a ticket if the person's under 21, right? And this is why venues do that. It's not because they're trying to be shady. It's not because they're trying to rip people off. It's just no money on the table. It's really, really tough to run a business at a venue. So hopefully you guys learned a lot from this video and how venue deals work. Maybe work together with your venues and your community to figure out how you can make shows more profitable. There's definitely ways venues can be more profitable. Maybe you guys can split some sponsorships money for shows, bring in sponsors, right? Maybe the venue is a nonprofit venue and maybe you raise some money for the venue's causes and keeping live music alive. But the numbers are slim. So hopefully you guys learned a lot from this, and thank you all for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment if you have any questions or would like to see some additional content in the future. I always take requests for content and love diving deep into different topics. So just let me know what you guys want to hear. And until next time, spread love, positivity, and kindness in the world and live the life you love. Peace, my friends. Live the life you love.